Hello everyone. Let's start with a new topic, anatomically modern Homo sapiens. So the long journey that started with primates and the first hominid, Australopithecine, it finally culminated in the evolution of modern Homo sapiens. And this journey, it started with Australopithecines, went through Homo habilis and older one tools, Homo erectus and Acheulean tools, archaic Homo sapiens, then Neanderthals, and finally, we are at the doorstep of the evolution of modern Homo sapiens. And this species, it emerged around 300,000 years ago in Africa. Now, some of you might be asking, what's the difference between AMHS and modern Homo sapiens? So basically, there is no difference. AMHS, it represents the physical aspect of the first set of modern Homo sapiens, whereas the the term modern Homo sapiens we sometimes use while referring to our population. We talk about the living population of Homo sapiens and that have separate, highly advanced cultural dimension to it. Because दोनों में अगर compare करें, so anatomically modern Homo sapiens, they did not have the technological breakthroughs that we have, the cultural advancement that we have set up ourselves in. So that's the key difference, which is a broader definition. But other than that, the anatomically modern Homo sapiens, they are similar to the Homo sapiens living today. Now, the general characteristic, and since this one is going to be a long lecture, so I would be brief at somewhere wherever possible. So the cranial capacity of AMHS, it is around 1350 to 1450, which is in line with modern Homo sapiens. The skull, it is high and rounded cranial vault. Skull height means the skull top, it is rounded, globular, and the cranial vault, the upper part of skull which houses the brain, both of them, they are high, rounded, and giving it a globular appearance. Globular appearance means appearance like the globe. Then the forehead, it is vertical and broad, like जैसे modern Homo sapiens में है, and which provide more space for the frontal lobes. So the expansion here, क्योंकि यही अगर हम compare करें with the early ancestor like Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Australopithecines, all of them they had this sloping, angling backward forehead, and then a slight bulge was there. This was a general appearance of a skull of early ancestor. But in case of Homo sapiens, we have a vertical forehead and then a globular, rounded cranial vault with smooth occipital bun. We do not have that bulge and it end like this. So we have quite a symmetrical face, symmetrical cranial structure. Now what this frontal lobe is, because face vertical हुआ है and it has provided more space, so space में frontal lobes आए, and frontal lobes, so these are located at the front part of brain just behind the forehead, and this frontal lobe, this front area, it it houses main parts such as frontal cortex, PFC, which handles thinking, planning, decision making, and personality. Then it also houses motor cortex, which controls voluntary movements. Voluntary movements means the movement which are undertaken with full consciousness, like lifting a pen, writing. Then in the left side, there is a Broca's area, which is for communication, language, for speaking and forming words. Then the frontal area, the frontal lobe, they are divided amongst hemisphere. क्योंकि अगर आपको पता हो तो our brain, it is divided into two hemisphere, left and right, and each of them they control different functions. But more often than not, each area, each hemisphere, it is linked to the functions of opposite side of body, because we have a chiral structure, chiral or mirror shape. Our body, it is divided into two chiral shapes. So in that way, the if you look at it this way, so the left hemisphere will control the right side and the right one, it control left side. This is how it works. Then the functions of frontal lobes, so abhi thoda bahut bata diya, they help us think, plan and make decision. So it was a serious strategic evolution because it was the this thinking, planning, and decision making which helped us evolve to the highest manipulator of the environment in this animal kingdom. So the frontal lobes, they also control behavior, emotions, and movements. And then uh, uh, damage to this area. Yes, I want to highlight this thing. If there is damage to the frontal lobes, it can affect personality, behavior, and ability to make good choices. And that's why the evolution of this thing, which controls a lot of abstract things which are absent from other species of animal kingdom. Like you can see here, behavior, emotions, decision, planning, thinking, focus, control, and understanding rules, setting goals, imagining future situation. So if you can recall the older one tool, the Ashurian tools, उसमें एक चीज बार बार आ रही थी, the mental template, which was a hallmark for evolution towards higher Homo sapiens, higher hominins. Mental template means the organism under consideration, he can visualize the final outcome. So यहाँ पे जो expansion है that differentiate us from other organisms, other animal species, is this mental template. और ये mental template है, it became a reality because of expansion of the frontal lobes. Now let's proceed to the facial structure. So the face, the jaw, it has reduced prognathism, or the face is orthognathic or flat face. So prognathism, it is about protrusion, the sticking out of jaw. Whereas orthognathic, it means the face, it is opposite to prognathism, which means there is no protrusion, no sticking out, the face is flat. Then the next characteristic is mental eminence. So it is a hallmark of a unique characteristic of modern Homo sapiens, that we have a well-defined chin, also known as mental eminence, and no other hominin species possess a well-developed chin. सबके अंदर chin absent है. Now the occipital region. Occipital means the back part of skull. So this bone, it is rounded and smooth. बाकी species में there is a bulge, there is a occipital bun. And AMHS, modern Homo sapiens, they lack the occipital bun. Now the brow ridges, again supraorbital torus, so we have small or reduced brow ridges. Whereas जो बाकी ऑस्ट्रेलोपिथेसिस से यहाँ पे आके होमो सेपियंस सबके अंदर देखा होगा कि they had this supraorbital torus, brow ridges. किसी के अंदर prominent थी, किसी के अंदर reduced थी, but all of them they had the visible brow ridges. और हमारे species में Homo sapiens, उसके अंदर these brow ridges, they are quite small. Now let's talk about postcranial characteristic. So body proportions, the AMHS, they have gracile, slender and less robust body structure. Now this means that the limbs, हाथ और पैर जो है, are longer in proportion to the torso. Torso, the middle structure from the collarbone to the beginning of pelvic area. So this structure, it is known as torso. और AMHS में the limbs, हाथ और पैर, they are longer than this area. And now this limb to body ratio, which means the length of both hands and legs and the proportion of that to overall body, this ratio, it supports thermoregulation. फिर यहाँ पे जो Allen's rule है, which says that longer limbs in warmer climate, they are an evolutionary adaptation, same as slender bodies in warmer environment. So here both Allen and Bergman rule, और मैं बता देता हूँ थोड़ा बहुत. So this Allen rule, it is about limbs, and it says that in warm climate the limbs, they need to be longer for easy dissipation of heat. जो bodily heat है, it should dissipate in warm climate so as to cool down the body. And the Bergman rule, it is about bodies, the overall physical volume, body volume. And it says in warmer environment, the bodies, they should be slender or slim. So the purpose is same, dissipation of heat. Now, as of pelvis and limbs, so the pelvis, it is short and broad to support upright walking and balance. Then the reduced robusticity, जो अभी पहले बता दिया है. We have lighter bones with thinner cortical bone walls, which is in contrast with heavier, more robust skeleton of Neanderthal and Homo erectus. So ये चीज तो पहले ही बता चुके हैं कि Neanderthal and Homo erectus, both of them, they had the robust physical structure, whereas the AMHS, they have lighter bones, and this thing is new for someone. Thinner cortical bone wall, which is nothing but जो outer layer है, bone के ऊपर जो tissue की outer layer है, it is known as cortical bone wall, and we have this bone wall thin. We do not have this outer tissue as dense as Neanderthal and Homo erectus. And then what was the reason, what was the evolutionary adaptation for having less dense outer tissues? So this reduction, it suggests mechanical stress on the body was lessened, and this lessening of mechanical stress, it was due to increased use of tools, shelters, clothing and other cultural innovation. And that's true, because अगर हम जो AMHS the first stock है, उससे जो modern Homo sapiens को अगर compare करें, then the robusticity, it has reduced to quite a considerable extent, because उस time से अब तक in 300,000 we have our use of tools, it has grown exponentially. Then the shelter, clothing, our sedentary lifestyle, then our professionalism, all of these areas, they have reduced the physical stress to a considerable extent. So यही सेम चीज जो है, जो हम अपने में जो मॉडर्न होमो सेपियंस ऑफ 2025 और जो AMHS हैं ऑफ 300,000 years ago, उनके बीच में कंपेयर करें, तो जो रोबस्टिसिटी का डिफरेंस है, that same difference existed between AMHS of 300,000 and Neanderthal of Pleistocene period. क्योंकि धीरे धीरे वक्त के साथ जो है, ये जो फिजिकल स्ट्रेस है, it has reduced to quite extent. Now the behavioral and cultural features. While comparing AMHS with early hominins, there is a manifold evolution, manifold advancement in behavior capabilities, symbolic thinking, language, art, and social complexity. And all of these behavior markers, they show the transition from biological evolution, only the physical changes, to cultural evolution. The first such change was in symbolic way, symbolic thought. So AMHS, they demonstrated the ability to think symbolically. Symbolically means in the terms of art, as a simple thing. So there are cave paintings that have found in Lascaux, Chauvet in France. Then AMHS, they frequently use personal ornaments such as bead, shells and body paint. And they have shown the clear evidence of burial practices, often with grave goods, ochre and ceremonial positioning. So all of these behavior, they indicate that the theory of mind, which is the ability to understand the thought of others, was emerging in AMHS. Now, as of tool structure, so AMHS, they developed diverse and specialized tools that marked the Upper Paleolithic revolution. And these tools include blade tools and tools that are made of not just stone but also from bone, antler and ivory tools. And they also made composite tools made by combining different materials such as hafted spear. फिर language and cognition की बात करते हैं. So this distinguishing feature in AMHS was the well-developed Broca's area. Broca's area is associated with language, with the speech production, and there is another Warnick's area, which is for language comprehension. So both of these, they are in the frontal lobes, so that's where the expansion happened. So frontal lobe में in expansion की वजह से the language it got the boost, and it might be the reason, one of the significant milestone in our evolutionary journey that helped AMHS evolve in that culturally sophisticated way and outcompete any other competitor that existed at that time. The social organization की बात करते हैं, the AMHS they lived in larger, more complex social group with complex hierarchy, more role differentiation, more task differentiation, and then this particular group, it might have led in culture as a mean of survival, not just a mean of going through, mean of living through. So this particular transition of making culture as a mean of survival might have made AMHS the first truly cultural species. Now let's proceed on to the origin and dispersal of AMHS. First, the out of Africa hypothesis. So this hypothesis, also known as the recent African origin model, it is the most widely accepted explanation for origin and the global spread of AMHS. So this hypothesis proposes that all living modern Homo sapiens, they evolved from a common ancestor in Africa, then migrated outward, gradually replacing and assimilating, outcompeting other archaic Homo population, human population living across the globe. So this assimilation is talking about Neanderthals, Denisovans. Now, the origin in Africa. So the fossil evidence suggests that AMHS first emerged in East Africa around 300,000 years ago. East Africa, the great African, East African Rift Valley, which are considered the cradle of humankind, and that's where the modern Homo sapiens first emerged. Where fossil site, first Jebel Irhoud in Morocco, which is again dated to around 300,000 years ago, and then the other site Homo Kibish in Ethiopia, and here the Homo first fossil, which is dated around 195,000, it displayed modern anatomically feature including high forehead and chin, both of which are hallmark of modern Homo sapiens. और सिर्फ जेबे इरहुड के अंदर भी जो फॉसिल मिले हैं, it had high cranial vault, upper skull, and reduced brow ridges, both of again features that resemble modern Homo sapiens. Fair, another example of fossil from Harto, Ethiopia, which is dated around 160,000 years ago, and again show features which are consistent with the modern Homo sapiens. तो origin की बात हो गई है. Now let's talk about how they dispersed. वैसे some idea has been given in when I talk about Neanderthals and archaic Homo sapiens. अभी in broader terms, so they began migrating around 100,000 to 60,000 years ago, and the primary route likely followed the northeastern corridor via the Sinai Peninsula. Sinai Peninsula in at Israel-Palestine-Jordan border into the Levant, and the Levant area in modern time it is Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, and from this route they likely spread into Europe by 45,000 years ago. और जो Neanderthal का lecture है उसमें बताया था कि around 40,000 years ago Neanderthal went into extinction just when they came into contact with modern Homo sapiens. Then into Central and South Asia about 50,000 to 40,000 years ago, into Southeast Asia and Australia about 50,000 years ago, and into Americas around 15,000 to 20,000 years ago via Beringia. And अभी इन सब के बारे में one by one देखते हैं. Now the archaeological evidence of dispersal. So in Israel's Skull and Kafze cave, the AMHS fossils have been found which are dated around 100,000 years ago. Then in Australia, the evidence from Lake Mungo for both Mungo man and Mungo lady, which are dated to around 40,000 to 50,000 years ago. Again, show early AMHS like features. Then in Europe, the AMHS fossils such as Cro-Magnon and Sanchelad, both of them are dated around 45,000 years ago and coexisting briefly with the Neanderthals and Denisovans both. और ये जो टॉपिक है क्रोमैनियन सांशले ये जो है ये यूजीसी एंड यूपीएससी दोनों में कॉमन है. सो दिस इज नॉट यूजीसी स्पेसिफिक वन, क्योंकि अगर टॉपिक्स कोइंसाइड कर रहे हैं देन इट माइट बी सम यू नो benefit to both of them, both of you. Now let's talk about the interaction with archaic humans. So first, they came into contact with the Neanderthal in Europe and Western Asia, and the modern DNA analysis it shows that the non-African population they have about 1.5% to 2.1% Neanderthal DNA, and this figure it vary to up to some extent, like the recent this Swante Pabo study about Mac Planck's Institute. It provided the rough estimate of 1 to 4% of Neanderthal DNA present in the non-African population. So in any way, चाहे ये figure हो या ये वाला हो, both these figures they suggest that Neanderthal they interbred or the AMHS interbred with the Neanderthal. Then this exchange also suggests limited assimilation between AMHS and Neanderthal before Neanderthal went extinct around 40,000 years ago. फिर Denisovans की बात करते हैं. This particular it was discovered in Denisova cave, Siberia, and this group contributed significant genetic material to modern population, especially the Melanesians and Aboriginal Australians, which have up to 5% Denisovan ancestry. So again, there is a clear evidence of interbreeding and assimilation, and these findings it support the idea that the gene flow occurred between AMHS and regional archaic population. So कुल मिला के बात ये नहीं थी कि it was not that the AMHS they came into contact with the archaic one and then killed them off or out-competed them all. So there is a story about assimilation, even if it is partial one. And this partial assimilation, it also provided fresh ground for this leaky replacement model, which again, nothing but this partial assimilation that AMHS, they interbred with the archaic population before the later one went into extinction. Now, the genetic evidence that support the African origin. The first evidence is about mitochondrial DNA, and if you are not aware about this, mitochondrial DNA it is inherited primarily from the mother side, and it mutates very slowly over time. And geneticists via the Human Genome Project and studying the gene of these DNA of various fossils, they have identified a common maternal ancestor known as the mitochondrial Eve who lived in Africa around 150 to 200,000 years ago. Now this identification thing. So if when you compare the DNA across वेरियस पॉपुलेशन, जो एग्जिस्टिंग पॉपुलेशन है, लिविंग पॉपुलेशन है, उनका डीएनए तो ठीक है मिल सकता है, बिकॉज देयर इज जो प्रेजेंट पॉपुलेशन है उनके बीच में तो इतना कंसिडरेबल वेरिएशन नहीं होगा. बट डाउन द लाइन जो डीएनए वेरिएशंस हैं उन वेरिएशंस को देख देख के या उन वेरिएशन की स्टडी करके, स्पेशली माइटोकॉन्ड्रियल डीएनए, उससे हम जो कॉमन एंसेस्टर है उस तक पहुंच सकते हैं और उसी तक पहुंचे हैं. एंड देयर इज वन मोर थिंग, ये हमारी जो ह्यूमन सेल है ये डीएनए है, सॉरी न्यूक्लियस है. देन दिस वन इज एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर मटेरियल जिसके अंदर साइटोप्लाज्म हो गया, गोल्जी बॉडीज हैं, वो सब जितने भी एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर कंपोनेंट्स हैं वो सब है. और यहीं पे इसी एक्स्ट्रा सेल्यूलर मैट्रिक्स के अंदर माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया होता है. माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया होल्ड्स possess इट्स सेपरेट डीएनए. जो न्यूक्लियर डीएनए है वो अलग होता है, माइटोकॉन्ड्रियल डीएनए अलग होता है. एंड बाय स्टडिंग दिस वी कैन अचीव दिस common ancestry, and that's how the geneticists they arrive at the last common ancestor, the mitochondrial eve that existed at this time. And then the conclusion: all modern human mitochondrial DNA जो अभी present हैं, all of them they can be traced back to the African origin. And in the same way, geneticists they have undertaken the Y chromosome studies, and the Y chromosome, which is passed from father to son, if you are aware about that. The XX it is a female specimen, and the XY it is male specimen. So one X in any male personality, male specimen, it is derived from mother side, and the other Y it is derived from male side, means father side. So again, the Y chromosome it passed only from father to son. So this tracing back, this weaving the pieces one by one, it has identified the Y chromosome atom, the common ancestor to all the male specimen today. It has also suggested that all modern population, male population, the Y chromosome, it can be traced to the common ancestor that existed in Africa at this time, 200 to 300,000. So that's all we have, mother and father. So that's how we have come to this conclusion that all the modern Homo sapiens they have a shared African ancestry. Then the third evidence is about greater genetic diversity in Africa. So this genetic diversity in African population it is highest, which means there is a intra-specific intra-species diversity is quite high among the African population, and which again suggests that most of the smaller groups, they, if they left in isolation for a long time, then each of these groups they can have their own separate species over time. So, and again, it also means this greater diversity, the greater intra-species diversity there, it also suggests that the diversity it reduces whenever one moves out of the African genome analysis. जैसे जैसे अफ्रीका से बाहर जाते हैं बाकी जो पॉपुलेशंस हैं, यूरोपियन पॉपुलेशन, एशियन पॉपुलेशन, ईस्ट एशियन, ऑस्ट्रेलियन पॉपुलेशन, इन सबको स्टडी करते हैं, तो this genetic diversity between individual, between species, it reduces. So this again suggests that all of the DNA in every part of the world, it can be traced to this land of high genetic diversity. Now let's talk about the regional evidences. So first evidence is from Africa, Homo kibish, Ethiopia. So here the fossil was excavated in the Kibish Formation, which is located along the Omo River near Lake Turkana in Ethiopia, and it was discovered by Richard Leakey in 1967. And the site produced two hominin crania, Homo 1 and Homo 2, and both of these fossils they have been dated to around 195,000, making them one of the earliest evidence of AMHS known to science. Now the fossil details. First, Homo 1, it display all key characteristic of AMHS, which are high cranial vault, rounded brain case, globular appearance, vertical forehead, small and non-projecting brow ridges, and presence of chin. In the same way, Homo second, it exhibits some archaic traits. Even though both of them they are found in the same place, but yet the diversity is there. Yeah, and the skull of Homo second is more robust with lower cranial vault, which again is a primitive and archaic trait, and slightly more prominent brow ridges, again an archaic trait. So this combination make Homo sapien a transitional form between archaic Homo sapiens and modern Homo sapiens. Now the implication, so the existence of modern and archaic feature in the same geological layer, which means both of them, they are coexisting together. So it suggests that the evolution from archaic to modern, it was a gradual process, and then it also reflects intra-species variation, जो अभी बात की थी अफ्रीका के अंदर. Where archaeological association, so the fossils, they are associated with the Middle Stone Age tools, MSA tools. Again, it is a regional variation of stone tool technology, but the processing technique, the production technique was similar, the Levallois technique. Levallois, which means a prepared core technique. And the tools, it include flake, point, and scraper, which is again a hallmark of Levallois technique, Mousterian culture, Azulian. Now, the significance. So, the Homo fossils, they are crucial in understanding human origin. First, they are dated around 195,000 years ago. So, they are the oldest fossil that display fully modern anatomy, or the oldest AMHS fossils. Then, the presence of a modern trait is it also provides strong support for out of Africa hypothesis. Then the third one, the presence of both Homo first and second together coexisting together in the same layer that suggests that AMHS evolution involved a mosaic of feature. Mosaic of feature means different body parts, they are evolving at a different rate. So finally, it challenges the idea of sudden appearance of modern humans and instead support a gradual evolutionary transition. That's what the mosaicism means. Mosaic means the development of different body parts, different traits at different speed. So in short, you can see this in a two way. First, they are physical traits, and then there is a talk about trait. So the mosaic feature, the idea of having mosaic traits, it suggests that traits are developing at a different rate. And here, when we take AMHS and out of Africa hypothesis into account, it suggests first कि सारी के सारी Homo sapiens population जो है वो एक साथ evolve नहीं हुई. There were many transitional pieces. There were many transitional specimens, transitional organisms. Second, this particular analysis जो दो तीन बार सामने आ गया, they existed intra-species variation in Africa, and that's why Africa is called the source population. And then third, all of these features, all the modern population, they did not appear suddenly. So in the meantime, when we were talking about when we had the attention over Homo habilis, Australopithecines, other primates, Homo erectus, or other locations, the AMHS population, it was silently evolving in Africa. And the next dimension, it also suggests that there might be the gene flow among subpopulation in different African regions. So there are multiple interpretation. And even I know that I am making this thing very complex, and it is complex. जैसे जैसे नए नए फॉसिल्स आते जाएंगे, नए नए एविडेंस आते जाएंगे, आज के 10 साल बाद जो जीनोमिक एनालिसिस हैं, डीएनए इंटरप्रिटेशंस हैं, वो भी बहुत कॉम्प्लेक्स हो जाएगा, और फिर उसमें भी बहुत सारे न्यू इंटरप्रिटेशन सामने आएंगे. तो अभी भी यहाँ पे ये इतने सारे इंटरप्रिटेशंस हैं, एंड वी मे नॉट get this idea in proper way, because evolution is quite a slow process, but sometimes it can take rapid form. So we do not know if the features that we are seeing today, if they belong to the slower process or the punctuated or rapid process, or कोई भी तरीका है. But evolution, even in general term, हमारी जो पर्टिकुलर एज है, जो जिसमें हम एग्जिस्ट करते हैं 60 70 80 ईयर्स, उसमें तो हम इवोल्यूशन चाहे कितना भी रैपिड हो उसमें तो हम इवोल्यूशन नहीं देख सकते. इट्स इट इन्वॉल्व्स रिप्रोडक्शन, इट इन्वॉल्व्स inheritance of traits. So it is even if in evolutionary terms the rapid means in 100,000 200,000, but हमारे हिसाब से तो ये अभी भी एक बहुत ये बड़ा टाइम है. Again, let's not make it more complex. So the Homo fossils, they consisted of two fossils, Homo first and Homo second. So Homo first was clearly an AMHS. It had all the characteristic of modern Homo sapiens. देन होमो सेकंड जो है इसके अंदर कुछ ट्रांजिशनल फीचर्स थे, कुछ आर्केइक फीचर्स थे, प्रिमिटिव पुराने फीचर्स थे. Now both of them, they were coexisting. So this particular thing, it suggests that there was intra-species diversity there, intra-species variation. And even if that variation entails variation of around 100,000 200 or 500,000, क्योंकि अगर कैचअप की बात करें कि how much time did Homo second have taken to reach the comparative anatomy of Homo first. So we do not know. It might be 5 lakh साल है, 500,000, 1 million years, वो नहीं पता. बट ये है कि इतना वेरिएशन उनमें एग्जिस्ट कर रहा था, और यही वेरिएशन है दैट्स ब्रिंगिंग कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी इन द फाइनल कंक्लूजन. So ultimately, we can rest the case here with it that mosaic features were there. The evolution, it was gradual, and then there might be some gene flow among subpopulation. It might be that Homo first and Homo second, they were interbreeding, और उन्हीं के जो बहुत सारी वेरिएशंस हैं they were interbreeding. हमारे पास फॉसिल रिकॉर्ड्स नहीं है, बट there was a gene flow उनके बीच में, और इस जीन फ्लो की वजह से ही उनके अंदर और जो इंट्रा स्पीसीज डाइवर्सिटी है और इंट्रा स्पीसीज वेरिएशंस हैं, they kept on increasing, sometime diverging, sometime converging. All right, let's move to Europe. So the first AMHS from Europe is Cro-Magnon, found around 30,000 to 32,000 years ago. And Cro-Magnon, ये फ्रेंच टर्म्स हैं और भी आएंगी, काफ़ी कॉम्प्लेक्स हैं. So it was discovered in 1868 at a rock shelter known as Abri de Cro-Magnon near Les Aziz. So this one is pronounced as Les Aziz in Dordogne region of southwest France. And the fossil, it included 5 individuals, 3 adult males, 1 adult female, and 1 infant with stone tools, ornaments, and animal bones. The radiocarbon dating, it has placed them around 30,000 years ago, placing them firmly in Upper Paleolithic period. Now, the anatomical characteristic. So Cro-Magnon male were tall with average height 180 centimeter, taller than both Neanderthal and modern human population. Then the build, it was robust and muscular, and one variation that they had gracile skeleton, slender skeleton with lighter bones and more refined feature. So this one is a typical feature of AMHS in contrast to the Neanderthals. For cranial capacity, large brain around 1600 cc, even higher than the modern Homo sapiens. Then again, some human features, high and rounded cranial vault with vertical forehead and globular brain case. These again typical features of modern Homo sapiens. Then orthognathic face, flat face with small chin, which again a hallmark of modern Homo sapiens, and brow ridges are minimal, and absence of occipital bone. All of these feature that distinguish Cro-Magnon from Neanderthals and place them under the fold of AMHS. Now the cultural and behavioral significance. So they are associated with the Aurignacian culture, which is spread from 43,000 to 26 years ago. And origination, again, in short, you can call it Upper Paleolithic tool culture of Europe. And this industry, it included long blades made from prepared cores. Then the toolkit included burdens, scrapers, bone and antler tools. So this significance, this advancement was there from Middle and Lower Paleolithic, and use of composite tools with stone and spears with stone or bone tips. So here the advancement was there from the Lower Paleolithic Mousterian culture. Mousterian culture, it was mostly uh, uh, you can say a manifestation of Levallois technique. Prepare core थी, prepare core से fine sophisticated refined tools बनाए जा रहे थे, but again limitations were there. Blades were not that long, and composite tools were not there. Then only stone tools were being used. So यहाँ पे clear advancement is there. Long blade है, and the tool material, it shifted from the bone to stone to bone and antlers. Then this clear differentiation, composite tools are there. फिर आर्ट एंड सिंबलिज्म की बात करते हैं. सो Cro-Magnon, they are strongly linked to European cave art, which was missing in both archaic Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. The famous Lascaux cave painting, it depicts animals, humans, figurine, the first evidence of human symbolic thinking. Then, as of ornamentation, shell beads, ivory pendants, ochre, they have been identified, and they also show intentional burial with grave goods, tools, ornaments, and red ochre. Then there is an evidence of interaction, coexistence between Cro-Magnon with Neanderthal for several thousand years ago, and there is an evidence for interbreeding between the two species. And this statistic is already there with us. Now the significance. So first, Cro-Magnon represent the first wave of AMHS in Europe around 30,000 to 40,000 years ago. So again, these were the African humans that migrated to Western Europe and existed there, survived there. And then the strong fossil and cultural evidence of modern morphology, symbolic behavior, and technological innovation are there, and that fulfill the gap that existed between the migration. And then the presence of evidence, it also support the out of Africa model. Now the second such species, second such fossil from Europe was Sanchalade, which from France 15,000 years ago. And the Sanchalade skeleton was unearthed in 1888 from Magdalene burial in La Grotte des Hines, near the village of Sanchalade. Again, this pronunciation, La Grotte des Hines. So this is how French is pronounced. Then the thing here, this fossil, it was found in crouch burial position with red ochre, and this was again an evidence of ritualistic burial practice, symbolic thinking that can be associated with AMHS of Europe, Sanchalade. And it is dated to approximately 15,000 years ago, and this fossil corresponded to Magdalenian period, which is a time of cultural fluorescence at the end of last glacial maximum. कुछ key terms यहाँ पे आ रहे हैं. So the last glacial maximum. So आप ये चीज समझ रहे हैं कि the Pleistocene epoch, the last epoch before Holocene present में, it ran from 2.6 million years ago to 11,700 years ago. So इस हिसाब से Sanchalade, it lived during the last few thousand years of Pleistocene epoch. And the last few thousand years of Pleistocene, they were also known as the last glacial maximum. So this last glacial maximum, the last period of Pleistocene epoch, कैसे भी आप कह सकते हैं, it was the coldest period of last ice age, and it ran from 26,500 to 19,000 years ago. And this was a time when huge ice sheets covered a large part of America, Europe, and Asia. So that's the unique point for Sanchalit. And the pronunciation of this one is La Grotte des Yen. La Grotte des Yen, the French typical pronunciation. And ये जो unique point है उसका Sanchalit का. Now the anatomical features. So the Sanchalid skeleton, it is morphologically distinct from Cro-Magnon specimen. So कैसे हैं? First, they were short in stature, around 155 centimeter, and more gracile than robust Cro-Magnon population. So physical features में the difference. Then this light and narrower build, it was an adaptation to colder climatic condition, but इसके अलावा it might suggest कि जो AMH population है, अभी हमने देखा कि अफ्रीका के अंदर there is a high genetic diversity, intra-species diversity, and then all of these subspecies, they are interbreeding among themselves. So there is a meltdown, fusion of features. और उसमें से जितने भी waves जो आई है out of Africa, Homo sapiens, AMHS की जितनी भी waves आई हैं, सब waves के अंदर जो physical features हैं, they might be quite different, distinct. So ऐसा कह सकते हैं कि Sanchalid जो है, it might have been another wave, another subspecies of AMHS that moved out of Africa. With cranial capacity, it is around 1450 cc. The skull shape rounded with high forehead, again consistent with AMHS morphology. Then face orthognathic, means no protrusion of jaw, no sticking out, a well-developed chin, hallmark of AMHS, and small brow ridges. All of these are hallmark of modern Homo sapiens. With cultural association, so here they are associated with Magdalenian culture. And again, if you want to know what Magdalenian culture is, you can call it the tool culture of Upper Paleolithic in Europe. And this culture included highly refined bone and enteral tools. So on the surface term, you will see the refinement, the sophistication of tools. Then miniature carvings and figurines. Again, yes, this one, the Venus figurine, it is again a hallmark of a typical outstanding feature of Magdalenian culture, that ये जितने भी बोन्स एंड टूल्स हैं, बोन्स पे कार्विंग्स थी, बोन्स एंड स्टोन टूल्स पे कार्विंग्स, और वीनस फिगरिंग मतलब बोन टूल से ही एक स्ट्रक्चर वीनस जैसा. सो अगेन इट indicate advanced symbolic expression. Where cave art includes famous Altamira and Lascaux, which reached its peak during this period. Then the burial with red ochre, a pigment, and burial with other artifacts all suggest ritual behavior, symbolic thought, and social stratification. In short, all of them, they are sign of growing society, growing social role, growing culture. Now the significance. So first, Sanchalid, it can be considered regional variation among AMHs. So because of its reduced size and more gracile feature, it illustrates intra-species diversity among European AMHs, or even the intra-species diversity among the various waves, various species that moved out of Africa, whichever way you say it. Then there is talk about ancestry, question, debate about ancestry कि modern जो European population है वो उनके real ancestor कौन है, Cro-Magnon या Sanchalid. So the genetic study, they suggest that modern Europeans, they likely descended from a mix of both Cro-Magnon and Sansolid individual. And this one, especially in longer time, there is a exchange of genetic material, gene flow, और gene flow की वजह से जो characters हैं वो भी जो हैं evolutionary terms में by works of natural selection, recombination, जो भी basic physical anthropology है, basics genetics हैं, population genetics के, उसके according फिर fusion of traits तो है ही हैं, फिर उसके हिसाब से भी population काफी vary करती है. Now the third evidence, third fossil from Europe, Grimaldi, Italy, France border, 25,000 years ago. So these fossils were excavated in 1901 to 1902 from this Grotte des Enfants, Cave of the Children, from Grimaldi Cave Complex in Liguria along Mediterranean coast. And the excavation revealed two complete skeleton, one male, one female, in burial context with fossil ornament and Gravettian tools. And these fossils are dated to around 25,000 years ago, and they are associated with the Gravettian culture. Now the anatomical and cranial characteristic. So both of them, they are slender and gracile with long limbs and delicate bone structure, again consistent with AMHS morphology. But here there is a catch here. The face is prognathic and nose is broad. So one variation is there, presence of primitive archaic trait among Grimaldi. Then cranial capacity again with a modern range, but brow ridges are small and chin is well developed. So that's why Grimaldi is quite interesting to study, because यहाँ पे बहुत सारे जो mosaic features हैं, you can see them together, like a prognathic face, protruding face, broad nose, but brow ridges and well developed chin. So all of these, यहाँ पे ये दोनों features जो हैं, ये तो आप जानते हैं, higher cranial capacity, reduced brow ridges and well developed chin, they are features of AMHS or modern humans. Whereas prognathic face and broad nose तो चलो ठीक है, एक वार्मर कंडीशन के लिए है, but prognathic face है, it is certainly a primitive feature. So यहाँ पे दोनों transitional features हैं existing together. Then the remains that were found in graves, they can be associated with the Gravettian artifacts, which is again the mid upper Paleolithic tool culture of Europe, especially around the Italy-France border. And the Gravettian culture, it includes blade-based tools with beaked point and burins. Then Venus figurine, which is similar to Sansolid. Then personal ornaments, which are made from bone, ivory, and shells. So all of these artifacts suggest high level of symbolic behavior, technological innovation, and possibly ritualistic or social organization. So अभी मैं जो कल्चर्स जो हैं ये ज़्यादा डिटेल में समझा नहीं रहा हूँ, बट आपकी टॉपिक्स हैं उसमें और डिटेल में समझाएंगे इनको. अभी आप ये जो ग्रेजुअल जो इवोल्यूशन है, स्टेप बाय स्टेप लैडर लाइक इवोल्यूशन है, उसको आप देखिए. जो एक फिल्म जो है पूरी की, कैसे जो होमो सेपियंस जो हैं वो कैसे इवॉल्व हुए, कैसे वेरिएशंस हुए और कैसे मोजाइसिज्म है. लाइक व्हेनेवर आई से or whenever the genetic study says that Africa is the source population and Africa has the highest intra-species diversity among subpopulations. So you can see the work of subpopulation, how they manifest in the 30,000, 40,000 year terms. यहाँ पे आप तीनों Cro-Magnon, Grimaldi, Sansolid, इन तीनों में देख सकते हैं. and present genetic study जो है वो अभी इतना definitely they could not look that deep, but आने वाले time में they might suggest, they might like look at this angle that yes, different subspecies, subpopulation among Africa, they are considered the source population, because each of the subpopulation, if left in isolation because of genetic drift, because of bottleneck event, because of founder effect, each of these can become a newer species or newer variant of Homo sapiens, and that's why what we are seeing here. But then उनके बीच में यहाँ पे there is no genetic drift. ये तो सिर्फ एक हाइपोथेसिस है कि दिस माइट हैव बीन केस, या फ्यूचर में ऐसा हो सकता है. बट इन प्रेजेंट यहाँ पे क्या चल रहा है, ऑल ऑफ दीज सब पॉपुलेशंस दे आर इंटरब्रीडिंग अमंग देमसेल्फ. तो इंटरब्रीडिंग की वजह से, इंटरब्रीडिंग अलॉन्ग विद नेचुरल सिलेक्शन एंड इट्स वेरियस फैक्टर लाइक रिकॉम्बिनेशन जो जो मियोसिस के अंदर होता है, फिर जीन फ्लो, या फिर जेनेटिक ड्रिफ्ट की बात करते हैं, जितने भी फैक्टर्स हैं, म्यूटेशंस हैं, उनकी वजह से there is a random assortment, a progression towards linearity. क्योंकि अगर आपको नेचुरल सिलेक्शन का अगर वो लेक्चर याद हो, I highlighted this fact multiple times that the natural selection, it tries to bring in uniformity, whereas diversity is brought in by mutations. Mutation is a broader term. जितने भी mutational factors हैं, mutational events हैं, all of them, they bring in diversity. But natural selection per se, it only tries to level up the population. Anyway, now the significance here. So the Grimaldi fossil, they have been center of debate because of unusual combination of traits. The mosaic of traits, they are really unusual, that are not seen among in any other population, in any other archaic Homo sapiens or the anatomically modern Homo sapiens. Now, the first significance is about variability among upper Paleolithic AMHS, because all of them, they are existing in the upper Paleolithic. So again, the Grimaldi fossil, they are evidence of diversity among Homo sapiens in Europe during the upper Paleolithic. And the features, they contrast with robust Cro-Magnon, gracile sansalade, and they suggest that multiple phenotypes coexist in Europe. Same interpretation. Now, the African affinities are controversial debate. So, जो यहाँ पे जो डिबेट की मैंने बात की थी, जो पॉइंट यहाँ पे मैं हाईलाइट करने की कोशिश कर रहा था, वो यही African affinity. So even if the modern interpretation, it is looking at the presence of multiple phenotype, presence of genetic diversity among the AMHS of Upper Paleolithic in Europe. जिस टाइम की हम बात कर रहे हैं, that is Upper Paleolithic, और जिस जगह की बात कर रहे हैं, यूरोप. So modern interpretation, it is only looking at one angle, one interpretation, that yes, in Europe these Homo sapiens are existing, and all of these Homo sapiens, they are having this particular diversity, but they are not looking at from where this population has been sourced. They are not. They're not. I can say they are trying to avoid the question, because the thing Africa, and अगेन एंथ्रोपोलॉजी के स्टूडेंट हैं तो आपको पता ही है कि यहाँ पे वो एक जो वेस्टर्न बायस तो है ही है. एंड whenever this thing comes, whenever the question pops up, whenever this interpretation pops up that all of the modern population can be sourced to Africa, so they try to avoid this, and they try to find answer among the European population. European population खुद ही evolve हुई होगी, but ultimately they do not look at this thing कि हो सकता है कि वही variations वो अफ्रीकन पॉपुलेशन में थे. अफ्रीकन सब पॉपुलेशंस यहाँ पे आई है. डिफरेंट वेव्स ऑफ सब पॉपुलेशन दे अराइव. जो सांसलेड है, इट माइट हैव बीन अ डिफरेंट सब पॉपुलेशन. जो क्रोमैनियन है, इट माइट हैव बीन डिफरेंट सब पॉपुलेशन. ग्रिमाल्डी है, इट माइट हैव बीन सम डिफरेंट. सो जब तक इसको अवॉइड करते रहेंगे, ये जवाब अपो पेलियोलिथिक में यूरोपियन सोसाइटी में नहीं मिलेगा. नाउ जो न्यू डिबेट है, it suggests that some Grimaldi, they show negroid features like facial prognathism, broad nose, and limb proportions, and this led to hypothesis that Grimaldi might be an early African migration into Europe. or possibly direct African ancestry. But the modern anthropology has re-evaluated these claims to fit in the narrative they believe in, and the observed feature, they fall within the broad range of modern human variations and no strong genetic diversity that support a direct sub-Saharan origin. Okay, now let's move on to the next evidence from Asia. So, Jinniushan fossil from China, and it was discovered in 1984 at Jinniushan Cave in Liaoning Province, northeastern China. And the fossil remains include a partial cranium and postcranial skeleton belonging to a young adult female and placed around 200,000 years ago in Middle Pleistocene. And the time and physical characteristic, both of them, they coincide with the existence of Homo erectus and archaic Homo sapiens. Now, the cranial features, a mosaic of archaic and modern trait. So, the cranial capacity 1330 to 1390, in line with the modern AMHS morphology. The cranial vault is more globular and rounded, again, a human feature. Brow ridges are present, but much reduced, again, a transitional feature. Not high means Neanderthal or Homo erectus feature nahi hai, and not that reduced means a transition between Homo erectus and modern Homo sapiens. But the vault bones are thick, which is an archaic feature or primitive feature. Vault bone means the skull bones, and high vault bone is suggests that the jaw, the face, it is exerting a lot of pressure. Now the facial region, so face is large and robust but flatter than Homo erectus. Again, transitional features. Then no distinct chin. Chin is absent, so it again transitional features. Now the postcranial skeleton. So the pelvis is broad and the overall body size is large and stocky, which is again an adaptation to cold climate. Again, with the Bergman rule. Bergman rule is about body volume, and it suggests that cold climate में जो body है, it should be large and stocky so that it can store, accumulate fat, and this fat will keep your body warm. Then the weight is around 78 to 80 kg, and quite high for female of that period of Middle Pleistocene. Where limbs, shorter limbs relative to body size, which is not consistent with human morphology. We have longer limbs, but we are also talking about Middle Pleistocene and cold climate. So shorter limbs are consistent with Allen's rule. Allen's rules is about the limbs, and it says that in cold climate the limbs they should be shorter, क्योंकि अगर शॉर्ट लिम्स होंगे तो हीट डिसिपेशन, हीट एक्सचेंज कम होगा, reduced heat exchange, and this will preserve bodily heat to keep yourself warm. And again, it was a crucial adaptation to Pleistocene glacial conditions. Pleistocene, again, if you want to know about it, if you want to bring it up into one line, so it was an evolutionary nightmare for our ancestor. Now the significance, so it plays a critical role in discussion on origin of modern humans, especially in context of Asia. So first of all these features is an example of archaic Homo sapiens, sometime Homo heidelbergensis or Homo erectus, or some early Homo sapiens in Asia. Then this fossil, it represents a morphological bridge between Homo erectus and later modern Homo sapiens because of all transitional and gradual features. Then the other significance lie in the regional continuity model. So many paleoanthropologists, they argue that the Jinniushan fossil, it supports the multi-regional continuity hypothesis. So this hypothesis, multi-regional hypothesis, it proposes that modern humans, they evolved in multiple regions from local archaic population. So this hypothesis, it stands in contrast with the out of Africa hypothesis. And again मतलब तो समझ में आ गया कि जो पैरेलल इवोल्यूशन है, डिफरेंट पॉपुलेशंस हैं, डिफरेंट रीजन्स के अंदर इवॉल्व हो रही है. Now, the third significance is support for assimilation or modified out of Africa model. So again, जो बहुत सारे interpretations हैं, with time many interpretations will come up with further excavations and fossil discoveries. So at the present, the dominant consensus, it considers Jinniushan within out of Africa model, but with limited assimilation. And now what it is? So this model says that modern humans, they originated in Africa. It accepts the out of Africa, the source population to be African population, but it suggests that the same modern humans, when they migrated out of Africa, they interacted with the regional archaic population, likewise such as Neanderthal, Denisovans, or Jinniushan. So this is what out of Africa model with limited assimilation, and they suggest that this limited interaction, this assimilation or this interbreeding might have provided the gene flow to the later populations. Then the final evidence is from Australia, Lake Mungo, from 40,000 to 50,000 years ago. So first Mungo lady was discovered 1969, dated 40,000, 42,000 years ago. And Mungo man, another fossil, was discovered in 1974. And again, it was placed between 40,000 to 50,000 years ago. Then these are among the earliest known modern human remains out of Africa, especially in the Sahul region. So Sahul region, it is the ancient landmass of Australia, Tasmania, and New Guinea. Where let's talk about anatomical characteristic. So first, Mungo man, cranial capacity 1400 to 1500 cc, skull gracile and thin-walled, face flat face, reduced brow ridges, well-developed chin. All of these feature consistent with AMHS morphology. And then finally limb bones, long and slender, which again is an adaptation to open and warm climate, consistent with Allen's and Bergman rule. Bergman rule, Allen with limbs, Bergman with body volume. And Allen rule for warm climate says that arm should be longer, the limb should be longer for smoother heat exchange, कि सारी जो heat है वो निकल जाए और the warm climate, the heat of warm climate does not affect a particular organism. और body के बारे में Bergman rule, it says that the physical body, the body volume in warm climate should be slim or thin so that the heat dissipation is efficient. So यहाँ पे जो limb morphology है, it is consistent with both Allen's and Bergman's rules, and all the features are consistent with that of modern Homo sapiens. Now let's talk about Mungo lady. Again, anatomically modern, partial remains only of skulls and bones, and this particular fossil, it was noted for evidence of ritual cremation. And again, oldest, this one is the Mungo lady is oldest known human cremation in the world, जो अभी आगे देखते हैं कैसे है. Now the cultural and symbolic evidence. तो मैंने पहले ही कहा था कि this one is going to be long lecture, क्योंकि यूजीसी के सिलेबस में बहुत सारे जो डिफरेंट AMHS हैं वो एक साथ दे दिया, और सबको एक साथ डिस्क्राइब करना भी, थोड़ा थोड़ा भी डिस्क्राइब करें, इट इज गोइंग टू टेक अ लॉन्ग टाइम. बट खैर, वी आर द फाइनल लेग. So these fossils, they are rich in cultural significance because of symbolic behavior, especially the mortuary practices. So this Mungo lady, she was deliberately cremated. Her bones were crushed and buried, which is again a highly symbolic and ritualistic act. And this symbolic behavior, it suggests higher social cognition, higher symbolic thinking, higher cognitive abilities. Then the Mungo man was carefully buried on his back with hand crossed on his lap, and he was sprinkled with red ochre, another symbolic element and another symbolic burial practice. The second cultural figure, both the fossils they were associated with red ochre, and this pigment might have been linked to the concept of life, death, and spirituality. But in short, if you do not remember it, just remember that the Mungo fossils of Australia, both of them, they are clear evidence. First, clear evidence, and then the oldest evidence of human cremations. And they have been uh, buried, they have been cremated in highly ritualistic act. Then the broader cultural context. So the people of Lake Mungo likely lived hunter-gatherer groups with tools that coincide with that of Upper Paleolithic period, like stone, bones, wood, antler, where fish, fish remains और herds के evidence भी है which suggests knowledge of fishing, cooking, seasonal resource management. कुल मिला के लोकल ज्योग्राफी है उसकी अच्छी knowledge है. And this Lake Mungo, this thing, it is quite different than the other evidence. जैसे अफ्रीकन, यूरोपियन या अमेरिका की बात करते हैं या फिर एशियन, इन सब में जो फॉसिल्स हैं, होमिनिड या होमिनिड किसकी बात करें, तो दे आर लाइक कंटिन्यूअस फॉसिल्स, एंड देयर इज अ रीजन, कंसिस्टेंसी और कंटिन्यूटी इन मूवमेंट्स, इन राउटिंग. बट ऑस्ट्रेलिया जो है इट्स ये काफी अलग हो जाता है. तो उसमें भी यहाँ पे जो practices हैं, cultural practices, they suggest that even if they likely lived in a separate way, likely lived in isolation, but yet they had they survived by using the local geography, and they had their own working culture. Now the significance. So the presence of modern human by 50,000 years ago, it suggests that subpopulation of AMHS that moved out of Africa might have used coastal or marine routes from Africa via South Asia and Southeast Asia. Then this again support the southern dispersal route, which is that जो modern जो AMHS हैं, when they moved out of Africa, जो कुछ जो है वो तो सिनाई पेनिनसुला से यूरोप के अंदर, एशिया के अंदर, साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में ऐसे, एंड अदर जो है एक और ब्रांच जो है अनदर वेव, इट माइट हैव टुक द ओशियानिक रूट, सदर्न डिस्पर्सल रूट. Now the next significance is about rapid dispersal. So the wave that reached Australia within 20,000 to 30,000 years of leaving Africa, it shows the remarkable adaptability and mobility of early Homo sapiens. Fair, the symbolic cognition. So again, यहाँ पे cremation and use of ochre suggest presence of symbolic thought, which is again जो already जो AMHS population है that moved out of Africa, it had the symbolic thought. Now the comparative summary, different regions. First Africa से Homo first, Homo second, age 195,000, anatomically features. Homo first, it was fully AMHS, whereas Homo second, it had some archaic features, and both of them, they are associated with the regional variation of tool technology known as MSA, but it used Levallois technique, Levallois method of production. For Europe, here first Cro-Magnon, 30,000 to 32,000, robust and tall physique with high cranial capacity, and face was flat, again consistent with AMHS features. Tool culture, origination, cave art, and ornaments, again typical of Upper Paleolithic tool industry. Fair Sanslade, France, 50,000, short, gracile, well-defined chin, reduced pro ridges, all of these consistent with AMHS. The culture, Magdalenian. Then Grimaldi, 50,000, 25,000, slender, long limbs, and negroid like features, Dravidian culture. फिर एशिया में जिनवाशान 200,000, again a variation of Homo erectus, transitional features, large brain but thick skull and reduced brow ridges. And it was the timeline, it was quite different from that of the modern AMHS. Modern AMHS सबकी जो timeline है, it is around 50,000, 60,000, but जो Jinniushan man है, it is placed closer to that of the Homo heidelbergensis या जितने भी Homo erectus हैं उनसे. Then Australia में both the Mungo fossils, Lady Mungo and Mungo man, place around 40,000, 50,000. Here all AMHS features, and then quite rich use of ochre burial practices, suggest symbolic thought, higher cognitive abilities. So this is it. Now I request you this thing, that if you are up for supporting free education, because I'm going to record all the lecture for UGC and then UPSC, and all of these are for supporting free education. And if you have found these lectures helpful, you can consider with the voluntary contribution. It's voluntary, no force. This is my UPI, and any contribution will be welcome. उसके अलावा this one was quite a long lecture. कुछ चीज़ें अगर मिसिंग हैं, कुछ डिटेल में नहीं समझाई है, तो पूछ सकते हैं. But just keep in mind that I have created this content as per the width, the bandwidth and depth of your examination. जितने भी पुराने questions हैं उनको देख के, जो answers हैं उनको evaluate करके, I have find that the UGC students, they have the depth, but most of the depth, it is the general in nature. Means ब्रॉडर लेवल पे भी आप टॉपिक्स को देखेंगे तो उन्हीं टॉपिक्स को, पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक को आप उस डेप्थ में देख सकते हैं. बट उसके बाद भी इफ यू फाउंड एनी अनोमली और इफ यू वांट टू आस्क एनीथिंग, द कमेंट बॉक्स इज फ्री. यू कैन प्लेस योर कमेंट एनी टाइम. दिस इज इट. थैंक यू वेरी मच.